The quarterly public forum put on by the Denver Citizens Oversight Board. I'm the board chair, Al Gardner, and I'm joined tonight by fellow board members Julia Richmond and Dr. April Alexander. And we will have other board members join as the evening moves on. And tonight we are focusing in on, but not limiting ourselves to, having a discussion with Chief Paul Pazen. Welcome tonight, Chief. It's good to have you.
Al, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to be discussing some of the recommendations. As you know, last summer's George Floyd protest that happened here in the city of Denver, and as a result, there were a number of recommendations that were made by our then independent monitor, Nick Mitchell. And the police department has had a while to, they accepted a large number of those changes, most of the changes actually. And so tonight will be a discussion around where they are with those changes. We'll take questions from the community members. If you have questions and answers, that's what we have Chief Paul Pazen here with us tonight to be able to field those questions and provide some answers for that as well. So looking forward to tonight's event. And we'll open it up, actually, to Dr. April Alexander, and then we'll go to Julia Richmond, and the board will ask questions first, and then we'll open it up to the public. Thank you. And April, it's when you are ready to ask Chief, go right ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Chief Pazen. Again, we wanted to spend some time today kind of checking in with updates for the community about Nick Mitchell's previous report regarding the George Floyd protests. I think this is especially important today, given that we may be having a host of protests in honor of the folks in Minneapolis in the upcoming days. So I would like to just kind of open it up to you about maybe the points that you highlighted as changes that would be coming from DPD as a result of protocol, and maybe we can follow up with some questions after that.
Dr. Alexander, thank you. The entire board, thanks for giving us this opportunity to talk about the Office of Independent Monitors report on the George Floyd protest and our response, as well as the 16 recommendations that they made. If you don't mind, I'd like to just give a couple of acknowledgments, and Dr. Alexander, you referred to it. Yet again, another tragedy that is completely preventable, and we collectively need to work together so that way we can find a way to make this stop. I'm dejected. I'm upset by it. It erodes, all of the positive things that we're trying to accomplish. And we as law enforcement across this entire country need to do a better job. And we're committed here to listen. We're committed to see what is taking place across the country and try to put mechanisms in place to prevent these tragedies from happening here. And I hope that across the country we can create some standards that stop this from happening. Secondly, I also want to acknowledge Nick Mitchell and the OIM staff. I know Nick has moved on to a great job here, but he contributed greatly in many different ways, both in accountability as well as some collaboration to improve outcomes. Bridging the Gap Kids and Cops was a great program, continues to be a great program, and he deserves credit for getting that started. I'd like to acknowledge he and the staff for this comprehensive report. I know that this is hundreds of hours of review, hundreds of hours of video review, looking at research in order to ultimately, the goal of this report is to improve our response. And 16 recommendations. I'm happy to go through each one if you all prefer. The long and short of it is we agree with all 16 of these. We are implementing all 16 of these, and we are tracking them for the public to see on a dashboard as each one of these is implemented. So again, I just want to follow your lead. I can go recommendation 1 through 16 and then just talk about each one. I won't necessarily, I don't have to go through the entire report. Is that amenable to the board? Is that okay?
Yes.
I think for the community, that those kind of highlights of the 16 would be helpful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Chief, before you get started, Chief, I'm sorry. We were joined by 2 other board members. I just want to introduce them real quick. We were joined by board members Katina Banks, and we were also joined by Stephen Stein. Did I say that right, Steve? Stephen.
Stephen.
Yeah. Stephen is new to the Citizens Oversight Board, and we welcome him. So just wanted to make those 2 introductions. Pardon me, Chief, and we're ready to go.
Thank you, and good evening, Chief. Yeah.
Sorry, the glasses were dirty. I couldn't read there. Make sure we're good there. So again, the OIM recommended that DPD amend its operational and crowd control manual to create a log tracking all of the less lethal munitions here. By no means is this an excuse. One of the challenges is historically those were assigned to teams, and due to the scope and scale of the challenges that we faced May 28th through June 2nd, we did not have a adequate tracking system when those munitions were exhausted. We agree with the OIM's recommendation, and we have taken steps to fix that by assigning a person to do this work, a less lethal coordinator, and then also assigning this person to where that special operations exist, and then including that tracking mechanism as well. So we agree with this, we have implemented this, and then we have codified it in policy as well, including providing the training to make sure that this doesn't get missed ever again. So that was recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2, again, the OIM recommends that DPD amend its crowd control management policy for the creation of rosters. To make sure that we know exactly who is out there and who's assigned where. We have an internal system that is electronic that captures our time and attendance. We needed to do a review of that to see if that was an adequate system, or if we needed a new system to ensure that exporting the names was done. We figured it out. And again, same thing. We provided additional training so that way we weren't relying on one particular person to do this, that multiple people could create those rosters from our time and attendance system. And we codified that in policy as well. Recommendation number 3, that the OIM recommends DPD amend its operation and crowd control manual to require that all personnel regardless of rank, working in the field are required to wear a body-worn camera system. Again, we agree with this requirement. We have implemented this requirement. We've corrected the issue, and then furthermore, we have developed a checklist. So supervisors in the field make sure that they document every member of their team and go through a checklist to include that body-worn camera, go over the requirements of having that camera activated. And this was also ensuring that it's affixed to the outermost garment, that it's not blocked during any of this time frame, and that it was codified in policy as well. Recommendation number 4. Again, the OIM recommends DPD amend its policy, and this is requiring that uses of force are documented right then and there on the night of. Again, not an excuse. This was an extremely challenging time period where folks put a lot of hours in. We have developed day of reporting, documenting that reporting and ensuring that we don't make this mistake in the future. Also codifying that in policy. It is currently reflected in the operations manual. Number 5, OIM recommends that during future protests, DPD ensures that its supervisors issue multiple dispersal orders before using force to disperse crowds when time and circumstance permit. Yet again, we agree on this. We will continue to adhere to the Law Enforcement Integrity Act. This is not only codified in policy, but also in state statute. That took effect June 19th of 2020. And, you know, we have adopted and ensure that we document that. I believe that's, you know, I know that this is codified as well, right? That we record these dispersal orders as well as give enough time for peaceful protesters that want to move along and not, you know, are adhering to those orders, that we not only give them time, we also give them routes, and we communicate that as well as record those orders as well. So, you know, that's part of policy. We had that in policy. We'll consistently do that as well as document that this occurred. And that was, I put 5 and 6 together. So 1, it's making sure that the dispersal order takes place and that there are a reasonable amount of time as well as locations for folks to leave. And then number 6 is that we document that by recording this to ensure that it took place. OIM recommendation number 7. OIM recommends that DPD ensure that all officers have their badge numbers and badges prominently displayed on their outermost outermost garment, whether this be the protective equipment like the padded field force gear or standard uniform, or, you know, say a jacket or a coat based on weather. So we agree with this. This is consistent with our policy. There were some challenges. We ordered additional Velcro badge numbers for every single member to ensure that it affixes to that outermost garment. We also added tape that documents the badge numbers as well on the helmets to ensure that identification takes place. OIM recommendation number 8, that DPD ensures that only officers who have been trained and certified on the use of pepper ball and 40 millimeter systems, that they are the only ones permitted to utilize this. Again, we agree with this. There were significant challenges when you have 81 officers who were injured over that 5-day period. We will ensure that, or we have already implemented this as far as additional training. Hundreds of our officers have received additional field force training. We are doing 4-hour training every quarter for our officers, both online type of training as well as in-person practical training as well. So this training is not just 2020 or 2021. This ongoing training, throughout, to make sure that we are prepared as possible to deal with any of the challenges that we face moving forward. We talked about recommendation number 9 just a little bit. The OIM recommended transparency to our community, to our stakeholders here, evaluate how to operationalize these internal controls, and then how we can report back to the public with an explanation of what's been done and when it's been done. And that's that public dashboard, so that way folks can keep track and say, you said you were going to do all 16. When are these done? So that is up and on the dashboard. Recommendation number 10, the OIM recommends that the Denver Police Department disallow the use of rubber ball grenades. Again, we have agreed to that. We pulled that tool off the table. We don't utilize that for crowd control. We've also codified this in the policy manual as well. Recommendation number 11, kind of similar to number 10. This is specific to noise flash diversion devices, making sure that only trained members, trained folks utilize that. We agree on that, and that has also been codified in policy manual to ensure that that happens and documented. Number 12, the OIM recommends that DPD revise its standards for pepper ball use during crowd control situations. The OIM's report was very specific in this to limit direct fire applications only to circumstances in which a person is displaying active aggression or aggravated active aggression. We have changed our policy for that direct fire in here, and it's been codified in policy as well. A little bit of feedback. Would you
mind muting your phone? Are you able to mute that, Nicole?
Try that one more time.
Yeah, sir. I'm sorry, I can't see your name there. That just joined. Would you mind muting your Zoom? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
we're good.
Sorry.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Al.
All right.
I believe we're on number 13. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Okay. Here's the one that we agreed to, and we're working on. The OIM recommends that the Denver Police Department develop mutual aid agreements with neighboring jurisdictions to address potential crowd control assistance. That these agreements should adhere to national standards limiting specific circumstances under which the request could be made. We agree with this. We have taken steps to correct this. We have draft mutual aid agreements. Again, working through this. I think we talked about it before. We convened Metro Area Chiefs Association, shared all 16 of these recommendations there, talked about how we could implement this. That is in draft form, and we should be able to execute the signed documents moving forward. So it's actually gone a little bit smoother than what I had anticipated, right? I mean, I think you heard us talk about this. I can't compel another agency to do things, but they were very supportive of this, and I'm excited that we can get this one.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, but maybe you answered it. Were they receptive?
Yeah, and Dr. Alexander, is it okay if we because I got a bunch to say about that, if that's okay? I can kind of talk about how receptive, not only to these 16 recommendations, but also other improvements as well. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I believe that we are on number, is it 15? Okay, so sorry. OIM recommends that DPD seek and participate in periodic joint trainings. Yes, this is happening now. It will continue as part of that improvement process, how we can do better moving forward. It's ensuring that there's close coordination, close communication between agencies, ensuring that we adhere to all of these recommendations, the Law Enforcement Integrity Act, ensuring that stipulations as well, that we follow those and that we are clear in that. And so that is taking place. And then last recommendation is number 16. The OIM recommends that DPD convene internal stakeholders group. The OIM, yet again, I want to commend them on this report. They interviewed many of our officers to identify what gaps existed. I also want to point, we have taken this step to include Division Chief Thomas doing lessons learned, meeting with our officers, meeting with command staff, meeting with outside command staff to make sure that we do exactly this. So ultimately, number 16, we do agree, and we have taken those steps to fix it. So I'll hit pause there, and if there's no other questions, I'll jump to Dr. Alexander and talk about kind of the reception that we had in February with the Metro Area Chiefs Association and the ongoing discussions.
I think I'll let you go ahead and do that, and we can kind of circle back because it'd be nice to have that full picture.
Okay, yes, we met. I think we talked about working with the Metro Area Chiefs in order to help work on these mutual aid agreements, to work on training, to work on the expectations that would take place, and they were very receptive to a person on this. We also shared some of the Major City Chiefs Association recommendations, right? Not only are we looking at what took place in Denver, not only are we looking at the OIM's report on how we can improve, but we're looking across the country, right? Are there areas where we can learn from in order to improve our response? And we shared with the Metro Area Chiefs the Major City Chiefs recommendations, and they were very receptive to that, right? It kind of goes to what we talked about right there in the beginning. We as law enforcement, there's areas that we do things well, and there's areas where we can improve upon. And this department considers itself a learning organization, and we are taking all 16 of these recommendations and implementing them, just as we are looking across the country in an effort to improve as a department, not only in crowd management, but also in other areas. So I'll hit pause right there.
A couple of questions from me, and then we can maybe go to the board. Is one, I've had to be educated myself on body-worn cameras and the different types of body-worn cameras. Can you explain a little bit more about the body-worn cameras that officers will have and how they work and operate? Because you mentioned, those will be recording the dispersal order announcements and things like that. When did those come on? Do officers, are they responsible for turning on their own body cameras? Can you just give myself and the public a little education on that?
So, Dr. Alexander, thank you for the question. Yes, there's, we have to look at all of the factors in here. We had some concerns about whether or not the battery life would sustain for extended periods of time, whether that be 12-hour shifts or 16-hour shifts. And during those initial 5 days, we had those extended time periods that officers were deployed. Obviously, a new camera and a new battery, those last longer than some of the cameras that have had their batteries worn down a little bit. But I want to commend our city attorney's office. They really have helped us in this. We adhere to Judge Jackson's stipulation on the requirement to turn those cameras on, to leave those cameras on, and to go through that checklist to document that every member has it. It's part of every operational briefing there. It's actually in red and it's read aloud to ensure that all of the supervisors comply with it, and that all of the supervisors then follow up with each member of their team to adhere to compliance with the body-worn camera, as well as badge numbers and badges and identification as well.
Another thing is, back in December, I know we were having trouble identifying some of the officers who were directly, we'll say, targeting individuals with some of the least lethal weapons. Where are we on kind of in that process of aiding some of the members of the public who were injured or sustained injuries?
Well, I will refer to the insurance that supervisors are required to have their team members with badge numbers, the Velcro badge numbers that were ordered. Again, this type of pin that I'm wearing on my standard uniform does not work on the protective gear. So we had to overcome those challenges. Those challenges also impacted the body-worn camera proper fixation on the outermost garment. But yes, we have done that both with the Velcro badges as well as on the helmets, ensuring that folks can identify officers that are involved in these types of situations.
Others on the board, and then after some of the board members ask questions, I will be facilitating some of the community questions with Julia after that.
Yep. Thank you. I think we had a couple of more board members that joined us. At least we see their pictures now. Want to introduce Molly Gallegos, CLB board member, and Nikki Brazil is also on the phone with us, the CLB board member. So, and the board is like April alluded to. It's, for those of you who joined a little bit later, it's open to the board to ask the chief questions, and then we go to the public questions.
I'll ask a question. Chief, a New York Times article from maybe 2 weeks ago was talking about how a number of police forces around the country had a real challenge in dealing with the protests, and there were kind of similar reports written about other forces. Has your team looked at those reports? And if so, what are you learning about other opportunities for improvement that, maybe we didn't have findings here, but things that you might also learn?
Julia, if you don't mind, yes, thanks for asking that question. I'm sorry that I'm not familiar with the New York Times article itself, but I can tell you and I won't give specific names, but major cities on the West Coast, major cities on the East Coast, major cities mid-Atlantic, major cities in the middle part of the country. We have looked at this. We've had ongoing communications with our research and planning team to identify what strategies worked. We are implementing many of these strategies to help us with this. It's kind of enhancing and even building on the OIM report as well. We talked about one, making sure that people get those verbal dispersal orders, also identifying ways that we can do this in a visual way. We're looking across the country at what tools and what equipment is best for the protection of our community members, for the protection of our officers as well. And these types of efforts continue. Open dialogue through Major Chiefs Association as well to learn how we can improve these types of responses and build on some of the areas that worked and identify ways to do better in other areas that were challenging.
Thanks. My next question builds on what you've just said. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to challenges you're seeing in implementing any of the recommendations. You suggested that you're making progress in some areas. Where are you seeing less progress, and why might that be getting stalled?
Julia, great question. Very fair. The challenge, we're committed to training our officers. We're committed to looking at what type of tools are effective. We're committed to looking at what type of strategies work on this. One of the challenges that we've had that has been difficult to overcome, but we are working through it, is the training component of it. So when you're talking about training every member of our department, all 1,500 officers in this field force training quarterly, this is a heavy lift. At the same time, we actually have a pretty heavy call load. 2021, we saw challenges in 2020 with regards to increases in violent crime, increases in property crime. Those continue in 2021. And so balancing out that heavy call load with enhanced training, it's a drain on resources. So we are figuring out how to provide coverage and then get folks. As a matter of fact, today we provided training for many of our investigators. But again, that has been really the biggest challenge is getting the time available while you are still dealing with an elevated call load. What we are seeing call load now with violent crime, property crime, traffic safety is more consistent with what we would see in the month of August, which is really busy, than what we're used to seeing in the month of April. And so that becomes a challenge. We still have to answer those 911 calls in a prompt and timely manner.
Thanks. Those are my two questions for now. I'm happy to turn it over to another board member.
I have a question, Chief.
Stefan?
Yes, thank you. Given that a lot of these improvements in terms of implementing the recommendations that the department has agreed to are ongoing, as Julia noted, and given that the trial of former Officer Chauvin is going on now, given the killing of Mr. Wright last Sunday, how confident are you that if a large-scale protest happened tomorrow, for example, or next week, that the department would handle these things in an appropriate fashion, implementing a lot of these, or if for that matter, all of these recommendations?
Very fair question, and I appreciate you asking. You're right. Some of it we've dealt with, the report primarily focuses on the first 5 days, May 28th through June 2nd. We had a lot of challenges through the summer, and I point to many areas where we implemented some of these recommendations, even before the report came out. Also, we've had significant challenges post-election, the Wednesday following the election, as well as Inauguration Day in January. We are doing everything possible to learn from, to improve, to modify areas where we can improve, and then to get that training out to our officers so they can perform these duties. And we're doing a lot in order to get this training out, to be prepared for any of the issues that we see with the trial, any of the issues that we see with types, anything that we can anticipate. But really, it speaks to we want to be ready always, right? We, by having quarterly training, by learning from this report, by learning from smart practices across the country, we want to be prepared for any impromptu, situation where we protect and facilitate and support people that are exercising their First Amendment right, that we are able to ensure that property is safely protected, that our officers are safe as well. So we're committed to learning from this, and we're committed to, not just the trial or any future updates, in the near term, but also next year and beyond, that we can better be prepared, or we can have more repetition with these changes in policy, more practice in order to do this as safely as possible.
I want to make sure. Thank you, Stephan, for that question. Thank you, Chief. I want to make sure that the public has a good opportunity to get questions in. So we may go a little bit back and forth. So April will facilitate.
Sorry, everyone. I'm going to try my best to organize some of these thematic questions, so I might not read them verbatim. So just please know I'm trying to do that to make sure we get all of these addressed. Chief, I believe there's like a group of questions with regard to non-lethal or less lethal tools. So one of them reads, is there a non-lethal versus less lethal tool option being provided for officers? And a related question is asking about nonviolent de-escalation training, and I think those are both kind of related.
Yes, and Dr. Alexander, I know you'll keep me on task here. We are evaluating all of the tools, right? We take the OIM's recommendation on the blast balls. Those were taken offline. What they may have been, tools that were deemed appropriate at one time. We want to evaluate every tool that we use, and it may have been safe at one point, or reported to be safe, and if that's something that we need to reevaluate, that's exactly what we are doing. And we are also, in the meantime, looking for tools that can help us ensure that, folks are able to exercise their First Amendment rights, and to do this in a way that keeps them safe, that identifies any of the individuals that may be violating law, and that we can do this as safe as possible. So we are doing that. We have reevaluated some of the significant tools that we are using. We have identified new ways that can do this, to build and enhance on our response and do it in a safe way. So that part continues. And then kind of the training is that's the next question. So one, we talked about this quarterly training, and one thing that I may not have put enough information on the training. We changed our use of force policy. We strengthened our use of force policy, I believe it was June 7th of 2021, right? We added a couple of areas to strengthen it, to ensure that it complies with the 8 can't wait. We also had policy changes that went into effect on June 19th. We had the Judge Jackson's stipulations that needed to be incorporated. There were some benchmarks that were part of the Law Enforcement Integrity Act that hit in September. And then there was also the recommendations from OIM that happened in December. So we've incorporated all of those state statutes, all of those policy changes, all of those recommendations as part of the training. And that's that's what the quarterly training does. And that's to talk specifically or to go directly to the crowd management or any kind of demonstration, protest, First Amendment gathering to ensure that we can improve and learn from those issues. But we're also doing other things to improve that training. You may or may not be aware of the ABLE program, evidence-based. It's built on the airline industry, the medical field, that active bystandership for law enforcement, ABLE. We were selected as one of the first 30 cities to do this. Now this list is gathered to over 100. That is part of one, making sure that our officers step in and the duty to intervene. We have that policy, but we want to ensure that the culture matches the policy and that we're able to support our folks to step in if and when necessary. De-escalation training, that also continues as well. That's, there's a lot of training that we have been implementing essentially since May 28th through the time period that we had to update the training for officers on not only what the policies were, but then to follow that up with training. We're also going through TASER training as we speak, which is very timely, again, with an avoidable or preventable tragedy that we are seeing. And we are implementing that training so that way we can identify how we can prevent those tragedies from occurring here. So not only are we doing all of this use of force training, all of this field force training, but we're also in the process of going through 8 hours of TASER training as well. And I believe what has been put together positions us to try to prevent the type of tragedy that we just saw on Sunday.
Thank you, Chief. That's a little bit helpful. We have several questions in our chat of the community really they were wanting to know more of these explicit strategies and trainings. So you were able to discuss the ABLE and some of this bystander training. But one person has maybe a useful comment that maybe we need to consider. They write, we need to see all of these benchmarks, all of these strategies, all of these trainings. So I'm wondering, for sake of transparency, is there somewhere, whether it's on the dashboard, where we can list these new trainings that have come about? And maybe, again, the public can look up the Georgetown ABLE training and things like that. So we don't have all this confusion on what's being done and what's being implemented. There still might be questions after that, but that's a series of questions that people have right now about what is actually being implemented.
I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure I have the the list of questions, but whoever made that recommendation, please thank them. That is something that we will do based on that recommendation, right? It makes sense to show what this looks like and maybe provide links to ABLE. That way you can see that this is evidence-based. It's Georgetown University. There's proof that this works in, as we stated, Airline Medical and the first department in New Orleans. They saw dramatic decreases in use of force. They saw decreases in discourtesy complaints. They saw higher job satisfaction. Nothing but good as a result of that. So I agree with whoever made that comment. Please thank them, and we will turn that into action and turn that into a dashboard to talk about additional training that has taken place on less lethal individuals in medical distress, First Amendment and public recording of police activity, community policing, ABLE, the crowd management, all of those. We'll list those out so that way folks can see what's taking place, because there's a lot. I'll be the first to admit, trying to remember them from essentially June of 2020 to now. I remember many of them, but I certainly slipped, and so we can put that on a dashboard.
And Chief, along those lines, along those questions, I think there's one constant theme that often runs the gamut when we start having discussions about what's going on between communities and policing, and that theme is often communication. And a lot of times, the undercurrent of mistrust that occurs from the community side is based on communication, sometimes, and not understanding just how much work is done and exactly what's being done by the police at the department to address it. In this case, we have a lot of items that need to be addressed, need to be fixed. And I'm wondering, have you or your command staff or someone, if you've been putting thought into just different ways to socialize the progress that's being made other than, say, the website maybe, and you may be already doing it, say some type of road show as best we can. And I know that's difficult right now, but if we're thinking long term, just trying to go outside of the box and be proactive more to say, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm just curious as to whether or not you've taken steps there, what your thoughts are around that. Thank you.
Al, thank you. I think communication is key to much of this, right? People deserve, they're demanding to know what their police department is doing. We need to make sure that we are both listening and sharing some of the steps that have taken place. If you don't mind, I would ask each of you, as well as folks that are on the call, to help us. We are willing to talk to folks and let them know about some of these policy changes, some of these training changes, and even some of these structural changes that we are implementing to try to, again, look at what has taken place, how we can prevent those tragedies from happening in our city. And that is what we are committed to. I can tell you in the last week, had an unbelievably powerful opportunity to, we actually did a podcast with No Justice, No Peace. Amazing young leaders in our community. They shared with us some ideas that could potentially help us in our training academy. They shared their experiences. We were able to explain, some of the training implementations that we've done, some of the policy changes that we've done, some of the structural changes that we've done, as well as agree to work together moving forward. As I indicated, we have a lot of challenges, and in order to solve these challenges, the violent crime, the property crime, the traffic safety, we can't do this by ourselves. We need everybody to help us out so we can not only prevent the horrible tragedies that have occurred across the country, but also prevent the harm that's being done in our communities. The way to resolve this is us working together. And I get that people are upset with us. I get that people are mad. We can put that anger aside just because this work is too important for us to stay dug in. We have to come together. So we are willing to come to community groups, to listen to ideas. Many of the best programs that we've worked on, the STAR program, right? We worked with Denver Justice Project and Servicios de la Raza. It was 4 of us at a restaurant in Northwest Denver almost 4 years ago. And it's listening, how can we get this put together? And then collaboratively working to launch it. And I mean, this is something that is getting national attention because it can help resolve, but that is by listening. We've worked with Together Colorado. We've worked with the Greater Ministerial Alliance. Together Colorado is amazing. They helped us reduce subjectivity from field IDs. This is again, yet another area where we as a community should be very proud of this type of work. They came to us, with a problem. We listened, we went back and forth, we shared resources in order to educate ourselves and each other. And, what we came up with, a significant policy change, is a big deal. It should be a national model to reduce subjectivity when we're talking about field ID. So all I'm saying is we are willing to help break down these barriers, these communication barriers that are, miscommunication leads to conflict, and there's too much conflict already. We got to, at least set some of that aside and work together for the betterment of our entire community.
Thank you.
Chief, following up on that, I understand from a question that the police have stopped attending the Reimagining Police Community Task Force meetings. So that's the first question. And then the second is, I also understand that the task force has made 100+ recommendations to the DPD. Can you speak to your efforts to implement any of those recommendations?
So a couple of things, right? It's well documented. It's been well reported. Kind of the breakdown that occurred. I do not have, a formal recommendation of 100 ideas that the folks have, so I can't comment on that. I can tell you that we have and will continue to work with Dr. Davis and folks that have ideas on how we can improve, just as we have with Together Colorado, just as we have with the Greater Ministerial Alliance, Denver Justice Project, Servicios, other groups on ways that we can improve. There was kind of a rough, not necessarily, line by line recommendation, but I look forward to seeing what the group comes up with. And I think we've demonstrated a willingness to work with folks and try to think outside the box for areas to improve. And I've listed a few of those.
Thanks. Another question from the community. Have officers been disciplined from the George Floyd protests? How many fired? How many suspended without pay? If none, why not? This community member said that they asked this months ago, but still don't have an answer.
Great question. And, we're making progress with this. each and every single case that goes to internal affairs is first reviewed for criminal charges. Sometimes those reviews take a little bit of time, and that is what took place here. We do have officers that have been disciplined and have lost substantial amount of time as a result of it. We also have officers that have separated from the police department as a result of those actions, and this is ongoing. By no means have all of the cases involved been closed, and you may be aware that every month we release our publicly release the disciplinary findings. So those are released monthly, but that we also have, I mean, as you are very well aware of, the oversight, the independent oversight from the Office of Independent Monitor that reviews every single one of these cases as well. And then those are further documented in the semi-annual report that the OIM office has. So there's multiple places where this information is shared.
Can you just, again, for the public, because I know they're listening and they're going to ask, what does substantial amount of time mean?
When we're talking about discipline, a 10-day suspension, that's 10 days without pay. That really translates to about half a month, based on days worked. This is work days. This doesn't include weekends, for example. So that's pretty substantial. Imagine 1/26th of your annual salary being taken away. It's a pretty significant area there. And then we also on top of any type of substantial suspension, as well as separation from the job, the folks that there's training components of this as well, remedial training components, so that way we can ensure that we have the right type of response or policy adherence in the future.
It looks like, again, I think people are trying to figure out where do we get access to these reports. Some people are wanting to know the number of officers who've had these sanctions. Can you provide links of these reports? Are they monthly and semi-annually? So I think the community is wanting a little bit more transparency because maybe they don't get the access to that information all the time or readily.
Yeah, they're pushed out monthly. We have they go out to the news media. The news media reports on these as well. And then, as I stated, they're also part of the OIM's semi-annual report. So every 6 months, there's a report that lists all of the police discipline, all of the DSD, Denver Sheriff's Department discipline, and then the outcomes from that as well. I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive report that also shows trends, patterns as well, so that way we can improve. And those are on the OIM's website. The disciplinary reviews, those are pushed out through the Executive Director of Public Safety's office as well. And we're not done. We're really, as I indicated earlier, every case of discipline, not only the first 5 days or the protest response, but every case there is a review for any type of potential criminal charges. And because there were several cases that were generated, those reviews were very thoughtful to identify if there were any criminal charges against our officers. So all of that continues, and I think ultimately the most comprehensive will be the OIM report, which is independent and done every 6 months. But we've already pushed out a few incidences where this has occurred, and some folks it goes out to the media and they report on it.
I just want to publicly acknowledge a lot of people are having a lot of follow-up comments about 10 days. In 10 days, they're not feeling that's enough. So again, I think that's going to be something that we just need to continue to reflect on and have conversations about. So I just want to acknowledge to the public, I hear you as you are writing these various comments because I know it's a variety of different people. Another kind of series of questions have been around the displacement of unhoused folks. And so several of the questions are asking about are officers conducting these sweeps being trained? What does that look like? How are they taught to interact with unhoused folks, especially those with disabilities, those with mental illness? So if you could respond to that.
I certainly will. Dr. Alexander, if you don't mind, I'm going to go backwards just for a second, right?
Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. I'm not saying that there's this blanket, anybody with a violation, that it's a 10-day suspension. We have folks that have separated from the police department as a result of this. So they're no longer, part of the police department. That, not all policy violations are the same. There's a disciplinary matrix that was put together in conjunction with the community. The OIM's office had a big part of it, COB. There was many stakeholders that put together the disciplinary matrix. So if there's a policy violation, A through F, based on the different criteria, some violations are written reprimands. Some violations are termination. I'm, merely using one example or a couple of examples that would fall under the category D for use of force violations. I'm not blanketly saying that, 10 days is just divvied out and that's it. There are people, multiple people that are no longer part of this department as well. So I hope you understand that. By no means are we trying to not share information, but these are disciplinary issues that individuals have the right to appeal. And there's several steps in that. And if I say something that jeopardizes that appeal, and then we have to, take an officer back, that is where we have, big time problems. So that's why, I have to be very careful in how I explain this, but I don't want to, sugarcoat this and say, oh, well, this is no big deal. No, this is a big deal. And we, with our community have devised this disciplinary matrix that has violations, commiserate types of discipline to that. And I just want to make sure that, I know people are, I would imagine people are upset, and I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm just saying, folks, 10-day hits and that's it. So that's not the case. Sorry, Dr. Alexander, I apologize. Could you rephrase the question again?
It's okay. The sweeps, asking about officer training, particularly related to engagement with unhoused folks. First and foremost, I want to show that there is a concerted effort to connect people that are unhoused to resources in order to help them. And we, as a police department, we are taking a step back in this. And the EIT, early intervention team, Star Van, other outreach workers are taking a step forward in order to connect people to resources. So I'm very proud and excited of the citywide effort to get officers, further away from being the first, last, and only response to people experiencing homelessness, and that the entire city is working on doing this in a more comprehensive way that utilizes mental health professionals, substance use navigators, resource providers in order to connect folks. So that's what's going on. The mayor announced it. I believe he announced it
right around March 1. If folks remember that conversation-ish, just, the mayor announced the transition over to EIT and 311, and we're continuing to work towards that in a comprehensive way. This is a complex issue. I think all of us on this call recognize that this is a complex issue, and we're working to try to get more of the mental health providers, more of the social workers, more of the substance use navigators, and the folks that make up the EIT from human resources in order to step in and help folks out.
I can pick up April if you want.
Thank you. I'm trying to lump together. So.
No worries. I know it's a lot of questions, so trying to parse through them is hard. The question from a community member is, say there are protests again, this next month. How does the DPD show up differently than they did this time last year?
Great question, and we certainly have learned a lot. We want to collaborate with our community, right? What happened in the first 5 days was difficult and harmful for many folks, and ultimately, if we work together, we can still accomplish what it is that our community is demanding from their law enforcement agency. And we can do that in a peaceful way, that people's voices are heard, that they are seen, that their message is conveyed. And we can do that without any violence or destruction. We're committed to facilitating that, helping people, be seen and heard moving forward. And I believe that we can overcome these challenges, by what Al talked about, by talking, by communicating, by working or committing to work together to address these complex issues. But digging in and any of the violence or destruction, that's not good for anybody. And making sure that we support folks in their First Amendment rights to continue to do that peacefully is something that we support 100%.
Let me ask this question. This is kind of piggybacking off Julia's question. If there's one thing that you could hang your hat on to say, we know there are a lot of changes. There were a lot of things that came out of the OIM report that need to be changed. But if there's one thing that we could say, if God forbid there was something to the scale of what we had last summer tomorrow, there's one change that you feel most confident about that your department has been able to make that we would see or feel or would materialize differently than last year. Just one, not a whole lot of them. What would that be? If there's something I could walk away with tonight and say, we don't have everything covered, but this we probably could look at different. What would that be, Chief?
There's so many, right? We talked about all 16 of the recommendations, but the most important part of it is really what represents our Denver community, right? Our city has faced many challenges in the past, and we've worked together to overcome some of the things that would have really been harmful to our city and pitched in. We hear you, we see you, we want to work together and accomplish what our community is demanding from us, and we can do that in a peaceful way. We can do that, respecting everybody's rights to exercise the First Amendment and to do so peacefully. So what I'm committing to is that we will support that moving forward, and that we also ask that everybody on this line, that we work together to do this, that we've demonstrated that we're willing to make the necessary changes, to think outside the box and come up with innovative solutions in order to meet our community's needs. And we're committed to do that moving forward. So let's talk. Let's work together. Let's hear one another, and that's what I think can help us not only with any trial verdicts or any of the challenges that we face in the near term, but also let's all learn from this and see how we can come together for the sake of all within our community, in order to do better moving forward. And hopefully that's something that Al, you can take away.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Chief, can I follow up on what you were saying? There's still a number of questions about the disciplinary process, and I think members of the public want more clarification on, and I know you were talking about a matrix, and certain violations result in certain penalties pursuant to this matrix. I think there's a question about who came up with that matrix, number one, and then number two, who does make the initial disciplinary decision? I completely understand you can't comment on any specific case, and the officer has due process rights on appeal, but I think the public wants to know, they just need to, the public wants to understand and get more transparency about the process. How does this happen? Who makes the initial disciplinary decision in the first place?
Great question, and there's a lot to this. Now, one, the disciplinary handbook, the disciplinary matrix, this is online. Anybody on the call can go to denvergov.org/police discipline, and you can review the entire disciplinary handbook yourself. You can see the matrix, all 7 categories that are on there. You can see what constitutes a violation, and I ask people to go right ahead and take a look. Now, more specific to the question, who makes the decision, right? Here is where that level of review, why our system, not our system as a police department, our system as a city is viewed upon as a model. What the OIM office does, there's many cities across the country that have replicated exactly what Denver's OIM or civilian oversight looks like. Now, let's say Paul, gets a complaint, right? That complaint can go directly to the OIM. You don't even have to file that complaint with the police department. It could go through our internal affairs. It doesn't matter how that complaint is generated. You can do it online. You can do it in person. Those complaints are received. There's not it has to have this or the complaint is thrown out. That's, so all of those complaints received, and then the investigative process begins with that oversight, that monitoring of each case. The OIM sees every single case and ultimately signs off to ensure that the investigation was thorough and complete. Now, Internal Affairs does that investigation. It's monitored. The monitor themselves or a representative can be in on the interview process with the officer during the question and answer time period. Make sure that all of the questions are asked and answered. Make sure that the investigation is thorough and complete. And then ultimately, there's a conduct review session where the Office of Independent Monitor is represented, and there's a deliberative process. Here's why, it's explained. Here's why this is a conduct category D. Here are the mitigating factors. Here are the aggravated factors. Here is the presumptive penalty as a result of this. We have folks from the city attorney's office. We have folks from EDOS that are part of this as well. And you go through the facts of the case, you line it up with the matrix, and then based on the violation, if there's aggravating factors, then the penalty is increased. If there's mitigating factors, then the penalty is decreased. Typically you start at the presumptive and then goes from there. So, and then again, all of the final discipline where somebody loses time, is terminated, those, are recommendations from CRO, and final discipline rests with the Executive Director of Public Safety. So, and then the question was, and stop me if I'm talking too much, but the question was, who came up with the matrix, right? That's the other question you want to ask. Again, this was a collaborative process, community members, and I believe in the matrix itself. So I have one in a bookcase kind of right around the corner. It lists all of the community partners, if I remember correctly, that were involved, the stakeholders on, hey, if an officer forgets to, or if an officer violates policy X, Y, or Z, that's where those categories were created. That's where the discipline was identified, and then the escalating factors, right? So I'm going to use myself as an example. I got in trouble. I violated a conduct category C. That's on my record. It's there for 4, 6, 8 years, depending on what the category was. And then if I get in trouble, say 3.5 years from now, then that elevates the discipline as well. But that's all online. I would encourage folks to take a look. If somebody is online and looking at it, please take a look kind of at the forward of it. If I remember correctly, I thought it listed all of the partners, and there were many community folks that helped develop this disciplinary matrix.
We have
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Al. And the members of the public may not be aware of the fact, and you can confirm this, Chief, that the Department of Public Safety is the umbrella organization that both the sheriff and the police essentially report up to. Is that correct?
You are correct, as well as the Denver Fire Department as well.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. I don't think there's a lot of knowledge about that in the public. I think is not even maybe aware of the Department of Public Safety, and that it has its own executive director that has certain authority and certain power, and that it just doesn't stop with DPD, DSD, and the fire department.
You are exactly correct, and I kind of want to piggyback on points that you're making as well as what Al is making, right? There's a lot of ambiguity about this. Like, hey, what does this accountability look like? What are y'all doing to hold your officers accountable? And having this discussion, having some of the, having this handbook and matrix online can help folks understand that. And again, kind of, I think it was Al, like, hey, let's share this with the community and let them know what this looks like. But this model is actually something that many cities have identified, the OIM, this type of oversight, the COB, this type of community oversight as well. This is something that people that cities are working to replicate. This is a pretty sound model, and it's not like this just came out of thin air. The Public Safety Review Committee was kind of a preamble to this. There was a lot of lessons learned from that. I know when they created this model that they at the time did a lot of research across the country to see what was working, what wasn't working. But there are many areas where the accountability, the transparency, the demands that community have, that that can be explained. You can see it online. You can follow up with semi-annual reports to see what that type of discipline looks like.
Chief, hi. Thank you for being here. It's my understanding that because of, I'm going to get the name wrong, I think it's administrative or executive process privilege, deliberative process privilege, that when the OIM disagrees with the safety department's perspective on what the discipline should be during all those meetings you mentioned, that they're not actually really able to tell the public, well, we disagreed, they said this, we said that, we think it should be this. And so, you know, in my perspective, the annual reports are very useful documents, but they don't detail each case and how, you know, the matrix was applied, whether discipline was held in abeyance, what the mitigating factors might have been, the same way that those letters that you release to journalists do. So my question is kind of two-part. First, the board has asked previous police chiefs to find a way for including members of the community in those disciplinary meetings, and thus far has never received one invitation. So my first question is, as we move forward, how can we create more public transparency into those actual meetings, into the process? And two, have you discussed creating an online portal, kind of like Chicago's oversight agency does, where every case is uploaded with the specifications and the body camera footage and the statements from the officers and those letters that you talked about, the Department of Safety releasing, which actually explain in great detail how the decision was arrived at, so the public is not, you know, constantly asking for links and kept in the dark?
Great point. This is the first time, and forgive me, maybe I don't remember this coming up. Was that brought up to me or Chief White about the deliberate process?
White, we've spoken to the Department of Safety as well about it. Spoken on the sheriff's side. We've asked a lot of people, and thus far, nobody has really wanted to pick that up and help us find a solution.
Okay, well, thanks for putting it on my radar. And if I did not, if that was brought up to me and I don't remember, then I apologize for that. This is, the first I remember hearing that component of it. I do see value in, again, publicly displaying the outcomes of discipline. We talked earlier about that fine line. The last thing in the world that I would ever want is that somebody was properly terminated because they don't belong on this job, and then something that I do or that we do interferes with that due process, and we have to take that person back, or some sort of settlement. So we will look at those models, and then again, I do have the OIM's most recent semi-annual report. If I remember correctly, any of those disagreements were put in a blue box. I mean, they were highlighted in the OIM report, right? Does any of this sound familiar?
I just think I don't think it's case by case. I mean, I'd have to go back. I haven't read the annual report in at least a few months, but it's my impression that they do, certain kind of headline cases. But if there was a particular kind of less headline case that a community member was interested in, that they might have a hard time learning what happened in that disciplinary process and how the decision was arrived at.
Mm-hmm. Again, there are some legal issues that we have to look at. As I recall the report, that any of those disagreements are highlighted on the OIM's report of here's what the penalty was. Our office disagreed. There's primarily agreement, and then primarily agreement in conduct review first and foremost. That plus 90%. There's primarily agreement in this, and it's probably a lot, high 90%. And again, I'm sorry that I can't give it. I don't know specific numbers or how we could quantify this. But there's also a remedy as well, right? The OIM in writing to EDOS, hey, I disagree with this. And then there's a process by which any of these disagreements are resolved. I just want to highlight the fact that there's very few disagreements, to be honest with you.
We have about 7 minutes left. Just wanted to put that out there, and I definitely want to have time to just have one more question and 2 other items when Nikki's finished. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm glad to hear that you'd be willing to look at a model like Chicago's website, because I really don't believe the onus should be on the OIM to explain to the public a disciplinary process that they participate in but are not ultimately in control of the process or the end decision. So, thank you.
I'm just writing it down as we speak.
No. Thank you, Nikki. That was an excellent question. Chief, the URL that you gave, the Denver.gov/police/discipline, is actually taking community members to a different page. It's taking them to a discipline handbook that's named the Matrix. So what I'll do is ask if you can have someone send it to us so that we can put it on our Facebook page. We don't have to try and correct that now, but that's what I'm getting from the chat. So if you'd send it to us over at COB so we can have it on our page, and that way community members that are having difficulty getting to that community matrix, discipline matrix, because it's going to a discipline handbook. So if you would do that, we'd appreciate it.
Al, if the matrix is within the handbook, the matrix is,
okay.
So the handbook talks about the entire disciplinary process.
Okay.
40, 50 pages, and within the handbook is the disciplinary matrix. That shows the 7 categories, A through F. That shows presumptive, aggravated, mitigated. It shows all of it. So, and then if correct, I will follow up. I'll make sure that we send you, Al, a copy, but the handbook is the entire disciplinary matrix is encompassed within the handbook. But I'll
just wanted to make sure that was clear, because it was causing a little, okay. Hopefully that cleared that up. Thank you, Chief. We have time for one more question. We can get one in quickly.
Yeah, there's a cluster of questions regarding budget and reallocating resources to human services. At what point will we start reallocating your budget to human services? Do you think we have a less need for police? How does the department plan on supporting the city in making funds available for mutual aid programs like STAR that have been proven successful at addressing community needs?
Great question. It's part of the narrative, part of the discussion. Please, note our involvement in STAR. Again, this started in collaboration, and we helped lead many of the conversations around this. The funding behind it. We certainly see this as part of an overall public health view of public safety. We see this as a continuum of care, and we recognize and see and hear the demands that our community, as well as communities across the country, are talking about. However, I also want to point out that we have significant challenges with violent crime, property crime, and increases in traffic safety. Just this weekend, we had 2 homicides and 3 people lose their life as a result of vehicular incidences. And what I'm telling is that I believe STAR is part of the solution. I believe co-responders are part of the solution. I believe outreach case coordinators and case managers lead law enforcement assisted diversion, getting people that are addicted to substances out of the criminal justice system and connected to case managers as part of the system. But what I can tell you, before we started this meeting, we had 30 calls for service holding. Burglary in progress, significant calls. The budget has to reflect the workload, and if we can get more, assistance for STAR eligible types of calls, we're all for it. We were just as instrumental as the other community groups as far as getting that up and running, launching that June 1 of 2020. We're very supportive of it. Our officers are supportive of it. More than 30% of STAR eligible calls come from police officers saying, hey, this person could benefit from the STAR van. Can you send them my way? So we're committed to it. I know it's not the answer that some folks may see. I believe people want better policing to address these challenges. We're committed to better policing. Part of that is ensuring we have plenty of resources to address mental health and substance abuse issues, and that we have adequate resources to address violent crime, property crime, and traffic safety. So I'm going to end right there, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chief. First, I want to absolutely thank the public for being a part of this forum tonight. Thank you, first and foremost, for taking time out of your evening to spend with us and putting forth questions to Chief Pazin. Secondly, thank you, Chief, for being our guest tonight, and thank you for taking on the questions from the community and from the board. Appreciate your time. And thank you, board, and have a good evening.